We're going to be doing experiments with painting today, and I think that you're going to really like this. So our supplies, let's get our supplies ready. All right, today we are going to need like 5 pieces of medium to large watercolor paper. And when I say medium to large, I've been doing small pieces all week. Today I'm gonna be working on a page like this. Like it's a little smaller than 8.5 by 11, but to me that's kind of medium to large. So we're gonna want like 5 of these pages, maybe more, maybe less, depending on how you do it, but we want that. Ideally, we want our watercolor paper, our thick watercolor paper. And I'm gonna talk more about that today. If you don't have watercolor paper and you're just using regular paper, be sure that you have some extra paper because we're going to be getting the pages more wet today. And so there's a much higher chance of it soaking through. So ideally watercolor paper is going to be your friend today. And we're also going to do 2 palettes again because we're going to have like our main one, but then we are going to have a special color off to the side that we want that to be really super clean, really good. And I'll talk more about that in a second here too. But we want 2 palettes ideally. And once again, we want our 2 or 3 cups of water because we're going to have one muddy bucket of water and then we want one really nice clean bucket of water. So at least 2. 3 is always good. I always try to have a little extra. I only have 2 today, but that'll be fine. And then of course we need our watercolor. And once again, if you have acrylics, that's okay too. We can always use those like watercolor. So that's gonna be cool. Maybe have some neat effects with that. And we're gonna want 2 brushes today. Again, we're gonna do a big brush and a little brush. And when I say big brush, I'm using this sort of medium-sized one because I haven't been painting too big. But if you have a honking big brush today, now's the day you can use it because we're gonna be using a lot of paint. We're gonna be needing to spread a lot. So we want a brush that's gonna be big enough to hold a lot of paint. So we have that. And we are going to need, once again, pencil and eraser. And I said ruler, we don't have to use a ruler, but we're gonna be drawing some straight lines, so that might help, or just a straight edge, like edge of a book or something's fine. And once again, lots of paper towels. And so those are our regular supplies and our special supplies for today. You're gonna need a white crayon. What if I don't have a white crayon or I can't find it? A white colored pencil could work too, but we're gonna try this. We're gonna try white crayon if you have it, but white colored pencil, if you can't find a crayon, that should work. We're gonna need some salt and we're gonna need plastic wrap. So plastic wrap, saran wrap, whatever you call it. I didn't hold this up last time, but if you can see me, we get ours at Costco in a big roll. And then if you happen to have an eyedropper, like I mentioned, now's the time to bring it. But if you don't have one, that's okay. And if you don't have plastic wrap for today, that's okay too. We can use our paper towels in the place of plastic wrap, sorta. So don't stress if you don't have the plastic wrap. If you're still gathering your supplies, that's cool. But I'm gonna show you what we're gonna paint today, everybody. You ready? Here we go. We are painting an outer space scene. Dun, dun, dun. So this, you probably look at that and you're like, there's no way I can paint that. That's insane. Oh, you just wait. You are going to be pros at outer space. We're gonna have so much fun. Oh my gosh. Okay, so before we get started on just getting right into it, we have to prepare our palettes. All right, now's the time. So I've been kind of trying to show with my little weird illustration here, kind of roughly how much paint I'm talking about. You're gonna need a lot of paint today. Things are gonna get muddy. They're gonna get crazy. Now, be a little thoughtful about your black paint because once you introduce the black, it's gonna get things muddied up really quick. So try to maybe I made that blob a little too big. Keep that relatively conservative. So you're gonna want black. You're gonna want a blue that you really like, whatever blue you want. And then I'm using my pre-made purple because I have a really pretty purple that I like. So bust out your purple today. And then on a separate palette, a little one, could be the little tiny dish or whatever, we're gonna put some white. And you don't have to worry about the white right now. Or if you just have your paint set that just already has the paints in it and the white there, then that's fine. You can leave it because we're not gonna be making a big frothy, wet mess of white paint. We're gonna be using a little tiny bit. So as long as it's just separate from your other colors, that's what I'm concerned about. All right, so what we're gonna do, the first thing to do is we're gonna start our main painting and then we're gonna do a lot of tests and experiments today. That's what we're doing mostly together today. So we're gonna start this main picture though. So when I usually do my watercolor paintings for my books or anything, I always draw my picture first and then I watercolor on top of it. So that is what we're doing today. So what we are going to do is we are going to draw a space scene. And let me see if I have one that's already drawn. I have a little one, but I'll show you how it's drawn. So we're gonna draw a really simple space scene. So this is what the final looks like but our drawing is actually going to be super simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle. If you need your ruler, that's cool. I'm not going to make mine perfect. And then I'm going to draw just a curve in one of the corners here, and that's going to be my landscape of the moon. I'm starting my moon, my surface of the moon. So I have my curve, and then I'm just going to draw, you can draw as many as you want. I'm going to draw 3 ovals. So I just drew some ovals, and then because I want these to look kind of like craters on the moon, I'm going to draw them a couple different ways so you can see how I've done this. I just drew some lines sort of next to those ovals. I drew a line coming out, so it looks like the peak of a crater. And then I drew this one where it looks kind of like it's a line that goes around that oval. It gives kind of like a little lip on it. But that's how I'm doing my craters on my moon. Now we're gonna do our spaceship. The spaceship is, I'm gonna draw it how I want to, but you can draw it how you want to. I'm gonna do kind of like an oval shape that's kind of like flat on the bottom. That's the dome part. The dome's really like a half circle or an oval. We're gonna make a pretty generic kind of spaceship shape. But if you have a different kind you wanna do that. And then how I did the next part is I just did 2 lines coming out of the bottom of that oval, and then I connected it with a line. And then 1 more line and our spaceship is done. I did this kind of, you can do it straight across the bottom, but I just wanted to give a little bit of a bottom dimension. So this is our base drawing for the day. Pretty simple. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk really quickly about how to think about approaching our drawings. So what you wanna think about when you are doing your paintings is you wanna think about 3 different things. You wanna think about working light to dark, big to small, and back to front. And we just wanna think about those things. We might not always do the paintings the exact same way, but you really want to work light to dark because we're thinking about our layers, right? Our light colors are our brightest spots because in watercolor, it's hard to make it light once it's dark. So we want to start and preserve those light areas first. So we're thinking light to dark, and then we're thinking we're going to start with the big shapes first, and then we're going to do the details. So anytime you're doing any painting, think about that, big spaces. So what are the big spaces usually? The background, the back. So think about that. So back to front. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna just go ahead and I'm gonna paint the surface of my moon. And we're actually gonna do a light shade of gray. So we're just gonna do a really light gray. We don't want our purpley blue water for this. We're just gonna do a light gray as our base. We're just gonna color it. We're gonna paint it in. And the nice thing about this is we want that moon surface to be really irregular. We're not gonna worry about making it flat and smooth. We want it textured. So once you get this wet with this light gray, and I'm gonna start dotting in those dark spots while it's wet, and we're just gonna let them do their thing. This is a lot about seeing what the watercolor and the materials are gonna just do on their own today. So I'm just doing that, and I'm gonna darken a little bit where the craters are, and we're gonna add detail and more shadows and stuff later. This is just that base layer. So it's kind of like that, pretty simple. Now we're gonna go over to our spaceship, and I'm just gonna paint the 2 bottom sections of my spaceship a light gray. Organic shapes have more texture, but a spaceship is, I'm gonna imagine it's made out of some like space material that's really, really like a special metal that's really flat and smooth. So we're these 2 different approaches right here. So this is what we've done. We did our drawing and then we did our base shape, and that's it. We're gonna leave this just like this for right now because this is our main painting that we're gonna come back to after we've done all of our experiments. So we're not gonna be doing any of the experiment pictures on this one. We're gonna save this for till after we've learned how to do everything else. I'm gonna set this over here. It's gonna dry while we get our exciting other painting stuff on. So the first test that we're gonna do, and I always take notes when I'm doing my test, the first one that we're gonna do, once you get your watercolor paper, I would maybe still draw like a little square so that you at least have like a space that you know you're working in. So I'm gonna write on the bottom of this one, I'm gonna write a number 1, and I'm gonna write plastic wrap so that I will know that this is the technique that I used to get the look that I'm gonna finish up with here. So this is how I did it. And yours could even be 4 on a sheet. You can do whatever you want, but this is how I'm doing it. I'm trying to take notes and do my little experiment. So I have my sheet here. So you're gonna also want your plastic wrap ready off to the side. for when this is time to start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate my paint. This is where our paint is going to get wild. So I got my purple ready, and you should all have your paints ready to go. I didn't activate it like I was too busy talking to you. So I'm just activating my paints. I got my purple activated. I've got my blue. And what we're doing here, we don't want big, watery, light colors today. We want really rich, saturated colors. So I'm adding my water a little bit at a time. So I want it to be really thick kind of looking today. That's the look I'm kind of going for. So this is why we're using a lot of paint today. And I'm going to do the same with my black. And we're going to, I'm going to keep an eye on that black. I don't want to get too crazy. So then what we're just going to do is we are just going to start painting. And so what I want you to do is I want you to spread your paint however you want. I did a little purple and I did some black, and now I'm going to do some blue. I'm going to go back to black. And you want to just do whatever feels good. You can experiment with how you are applying the paint. You can experiment how much you're mixing. And what I'm doing here is I'm avoiding, on my little test here, I'm just avoiding where that moon and that spaceship is. And once again, because this is a test, I'm not really worried if I get paint on that moon or that spaceship, because we're wanting to see how these sky tests are going to come out. Now what we're going to do, while your paper is still wet, we're going to grab our plastic wrap. Okay, I'm going to grab my sheet of plastic. You grab your sheet of plastic. And then what we're going to do, we're going to take this sheet of plastic and we're going to kind of like gently, loosely sort of crumple it, not like a big tight ball, just a little bit. And then we're going to just lay it on top of our picture. And we don't need to squish it down. We just want it to sort of cling, and we're going to have some raised up areas, some not. So this is what it's going to look like. We're just going to leave this here. We're going to leave that. So once you get it on there, don't move it around. Don't lift it up. We're just going to let it do its things. So if you don't have plastic wrap and you're like, what am I supposed to do? When your paint is still wet, what you're going to do is you're just going to ball up a little bit of paper towel, and you're just going to lift up paint so it's like off of the crumpled piece. So you don't want a flat piece. You just want to lift it up and kind of move it around. That's only if you don't have plastic wrap. So that's what we're creating different textures. We're creating different textures and different techniques to try to make this look like really crazy. Okay, so I'm going to move on to our next experiment. So I'm going to let this sit here. And once again, I'm not, as tempting it is, I'm not going to touch this because it has to be dry for this really to look really cool. So I'm going to let this sit here. And my next experiment, which I'm doing on my same piece of paper next to it, yours can be on a separate piece, that's fine. I'm going to do number 2. Our next test is droplets. So this is where if you have an eyedropper, this will come in handy. So this technique, we're going to start it off just the same. We're going to paint a background however you want. We don't want a big soupy mess. We really don't. We want it to be wet. We want it to stay on the paper, but we don't want a big soupy mess. See, I'm going to hold this up and I can tilt my picture and it's not even really collecting much in the corner. So this is what we're kind of going for here. If it's too wet, our friend the paper towel, just soak up some of those areas that are too wet. I don't want to get your tables all wet. So if you have an eyedropper, now is the time to get it ready. And if you don't, I'm going to show you what to do if you don't have one. So I filled up my eyedropper with just a little bit of water. And what I'm going to do very carefully, I'll bring this up so you can see it. I'm just going to drop one little drop onto my watercolor picture as it's kind of in that sort of wants to be dry, but it's still kind of wet phase. So you're going to introduce a little drop of water, and it's going to take a minute for this to sort of show up. But what the water is doing, it's kind of giving us that effect, like it's pushing the paint away, it's lifting it, it's moving that pigment out of the way. So if you don't have an eyedropper, that's okay. You can use your brush the same way. Just get your brush really wet and just let a drop of water drop off onto your picture. You can squeeze it with your finger even. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to do some droplets of paint. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want your brush really wet with whatever color you want. And I'm going to use my brush for this part so you can see it. So I've got my brush, it's super soggy. I don't have an eyedropper, so I'm just going to do it like this. I'm just going to squeeze my brush and I just got a drop of paint. onto my picture here. I'm gonna do another one. And I'm gonna rinse my fingers off and so they're not all painty and gross. So you can see what that looks like when I just dripped it on here. And what we're doing, we're just creating these like really strange textures and we're just letting this sort of do its own thing. So, all right, we're letting our plastic wrap dry. We did our droplets. So I'm gonna think about those droplets. So I'm actually gonna set this experiment off to the side because we're gonna keep doing more experiments. So we're gonna do experiment number 3, and that is going to be with wax. So we're gonna get our white crayon here, is what we're gonna use. And if you don't have a white crayon, if you have a white colored pencil, that probably works too. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our colored pencil or our crayon, and what we're gonna do is we're going to draw in the background of our space scene. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw like a little space trail coming out of my spaceship, like it's flying away from the moon maybe. And I'm gonna color in pretty hard with my crayon because what we're doing is we're creating a barrier from the watercolor to get to the paper. The wax is going to make it so that color sits on top of the surface. So you can kind of see in the shadow here, this is what I did. I did this sort of like space trail, and you can do like swirls and things. I mean, I would just kind of go crazy. I would just see what it does because this is the experiment phase. This is supposed to be really fun and we don't know. So I'm going to draw all over this one this time. So you can kind of see it in the shadow here. All right, so once you have this invisible drawing on your picture, on your test, then we're gonna paint over top of it. We're gonna do another crazy space scene. Then you can just take that paper towel and you can just dab that off of here a little bit so you can see that. And I think what you're gonna see is that like you're gonna see that texture coming through that wax is doing. It's just doing some really strange things. Last one that we're gonna do is, this is the big one, this is salt. I feel like that this one is almost just as satisfying as doing the plastic wrap. So for this one, we're gonna put our paint on here. Now, while my picture is shiny wet like this, that's pretty glossy, it's time to get your salt out. All right, so now get your salt. And what I want everybody to do is I want them to, here, I'll hold this up so you can see it a little better. I want you just to sprinkle your salt onto your wet paint. You can do it, doesn't have to be in some specific pattern. You just sprinkle it wherever. We're creating like space debris. Maybe it might look like there's some stars, but really that's what we're doing. We're checking out some space debris. So for those of you that don't have salt, maybe try something else. Try, if you have pepper, if you have sugar, just a little bit. I don't want you to pour food all over your painting. Because what we're doing is we're seeing here, the salt is soaking up some of the paint. And what it's also doing, it's also pushing away some of that paint. So we're kind of seeing the effects that the salt does. So if you are ready, now this has been sitting for a while, so this is dry enough. Okay, if you've been really good and very patient, I want everybody, on the count of 3, we're gonna take our plastic wrap off. You ready? And we're gonna see what happens. 1, 2, 3. What? It made these crazy crystally forms. Maybe that spaceship is going through another dimension? I don't even know what. So much fun. I love it. I absolutely love it. So hopefully you learned a lot. This has been a really, really fun class for me. Thank you so much.
Now, if you like that video, make sure you hit the like button to help us grow the YouTube channel, and hit the subscribe button to make sure that you get notified for future videos. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.